Hello and welcome to Unstuck by Nicole, a little perspective in your pocket to help you think differently, lead differently, and live a little more intentionally. I'm Nicole, and today I want to talk about manifestation. Now, before anyone immediately switches this episode off, let me reassure you, this isn't going to be an episode telling you manifestation doesn't work. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I personally believe in manifestation. I practice it, and it plays an important part in my own life. I just think we've misunderstood the role it's meant to play. And over the past few months, I found myself reflecting on one question. What if manifestation was never meant to do all the work? Now, this episode actually started because of a conversation with a friend. She believes deeply in manifestation, just as I do. And there was something she desperately wanted to happen. It carried so much emotional weight for her, and every time it didn't happen, she became less focused on the outcome itself and more focused on what she believed it said about her. Maybe her vibration wasn't high enough. Maybe she wasn't doing it properly. Maybe she'd somehow got it wrong. And watching someone I care about slowly begin questioning their own worth because a desired outcome hadn't arrived made me stop and think. Not about manifestation, but about the responsibility we'd given it. It made me wonder whether we accidentally asked one practice to carry the weight of creating an entirely different life. And I don't think that was ever its job. Over the years, I've had the privilege of working with thousands of people through coaching, leadership development, and training and facilitation. And I've noticed something. I've met people who are incredibly driven and high performing. They work relentlessly towards their goals, but they're operating from a compromised nervous system. They move through life with that frantic energy. They're rarely present, and they struggle to switch off. And they eventually burn themselves out either before they reach their goals or shortly just after achieving them. I've also met people who spend their lives putting everyone else first. They overgive, overcommit, and carry the weight of everyone around them. They're constantly exhausted, yet the moment they actually stop, they feel guilty, and then they start that cycle all over again. And then I've met people who have become incredibly good at visualizing the future they want. They journal, they manifest, they dream, and then they wait. But it's a little bit like hoping to win the lottery without ever buying a ticket. None of these people are doing anything wrong. They're simply leaning on one leg of something much bigger. And the more I've reflected on this, the more I've realized that I no longer think meaningful change comes from one practice. I think it comes from several things working together, and I picture it like a tripod. A tripod doesn't need one incredibly strong leg, it needs 3 stable ones. If you remove one, everything becomes unstable. If you strengthen all 3, and you create a solid foundation for whatever you're trying to build. And for me, those 3 legs are simple. Regulation, which creates the conditions. Intention provides the direction, and action creates the outcome. And I'd love to spend a few minutes just exploring each one of those. So let's begin with regulation. I genuinely believe it's the most overlooked part of personal development. We spend so much time talking about mindset, positive thinking, visualization, taking action, but we rarely stop to ask, what state am I in while I'm trying to do all of those things? The past year has taught me more about my own nervous system than any book, course, or podcast ever has. There were periods where it genuinely felt like my nervous system was screaming so loudly that it was all I could hear. Every thought, every symptom, every feeling, it was just so much noise. And I couldn't focus on possibility because I was too busy trying to quiet what was happening inside me. And ironically, the harder I searched for answers, the more noise I'd created. I was reading endless articles, watching countless videos, listening to everyone's opinions, and I thought I was helping myself. But in reality, I was feeding the very thing I was trying to calm. And one day I realised it's difficult to imagine a different future when your body is busy trying to protect you from the present. And that moment changed everything for me, because regulation isn't about becoming perfectly calm. Life doesn't work like that. It's about creating enough quiet that you can hear your own intention again. And when your body begins to feel safe, your mind becomes available for possibility. Once we've created those conditions, intention has somewhere to land. And this is where manifestation comes in. And I think it's incredibly powerful. I don't see manifestation just as magical thinking. I actually see it as intentional thinking. For me, manifestation isn't something I simply think about. I've actually built a practice that intentionally engages different parts of my brain. I visualize the life I'm creating in as much detail as possible. I then write my desired outcomes down in the present tense. I then speak them aloud. And I then spend time feeling what those moments would genuinely feel like when I have that as my reality. I've even created phone wallpapers that quietly remind me where my attention is heading. For me, manifestation isn't just about thinking differently. It's about consistently directing my attention towards the life I want to create. Because where our attention goes, our awareness tends to follow. We begin noticing opportunities, having very different conversations, making different decisions, and not just because the world has suddenly changed, but because we have. The final leg is action, and this is where everything becomes real. I've manifested incredible opportunities throughout my life, and one in particular completely changed the direction of my career. It gave me the opportunity to travel the world, grow beyond the life I knew, and become the person that I am today. But here's the really important part. I still had to apply for the job. I still had to say yes, and I still had to choose myself. At that time, someone in my life did not want me to take that opportunity. But for the first time, I chose myself anyway. And looking back now, that single action became one of the biggest catalysts for my self-worth. Manifestation may have helped me recognize the opportunity, but action changed my life. And the same has been true of moving to different countries, changing my career, starting this podcast, and building my business. None of those things happened because I simply visualized them. They happened because visualization gave me direction, and then I took the next step. So these days, I don't really ask myself, is manifestation working? Instead, I ask, which leg of my tripod needs strengthening today? Do I need to regulate my nervous system? Do I need to become clearer about where I'm heading? Or do I simply need to stop and think and take one small action? Because perhaps manifestation was never meant to do all of the work. Perhaps its greatest strength is the role it plays alongside regulation and action. Before I leave you today, I'd like to share one recommendation. If today's conversation about the nervous system has sparked your curiosity, I'd really encourage you to explore it further. And one person whose work I've personally found incredibly valuable is Kieran from Geography Craniosacral on Instagram. He has a wonderful way of explaining the nervous system and craniosacral therapy that feels practical, approachable, and easy to understand. So this week, take a breath, be present, get clear on where you're heading, visualize it, take one action that moves you closer, and then have unwavering faith. Not that everything will happen exactly as you've imagined, but that every small step is moving you towards the person you're becoming. Thank you so much for spending time with me. If this episode shifted your perspective, I'd love it if you shared it with someone else who might need to hear it. And until next time, keep a little perspective in your pocket.